Welcome to Widow's Bay. There's so much to see here. Come with me. I'll show you around. There is something about these seafaring towns of superstitions, their tall tales.
It looks like the island is finally starting to wake up, and with tensions rising everywhere, it's nice to have so many comedic moments to also balance out the horror.
Old fisherman's lore, you heard of it?
No, because I can't keep track of the amount of bullshit this island spews. No, please don't settle in.
And for this video, we'll be breaking down episode 3 of Widow's Bay, talking about that amazing cliffhanger and where it could lead, as well as go over any new details we see in this episode to clue us into what exactly is going on this island. We open the episode up into a short introductory video for Widow's Bay and how it was founded. And I feel real bad because somebody kept recording my guy despite the fact that he was struggling with the door, but kudos to him for just standing there. But there was actually some interesting info revealed in this little clip. We learned that the island was actually about 42 nauticals away from the mainland, which, ironically enough, there's also 42 settlers.
Yeah, no, the 43 passengers in...
I think it's a little early for that story, Jerry.
With that, we did get a number drop of how many people they currently have on the island, and they claim it's over 3,000. The camera then lingers on a small little glimpse of Richard Warren, the captain who led them there's second wife, Sarah Warren. Something tells me their relationship will come back into play later on down the story, especially with the island's rich misogynistic history that it seems to have. Either way, we cut to Tom looking at the town with glee as all the tourists officially arrive. Some of my commenters even pointed out that Tom's trying to get as many tourists to the island as possible to make it more accustomed for his son, as he knows his son hates it there. This potentially solidifying the fact that Tom is doing this out of fear of the superstition that should someone born on the island leave to the mainland, they'll die. A superstition that I theorized is what killed his wife, but he claims it was actually the childbirthing process. Either way, Tom's not really one to tell the truth all the time, so we can't really be sure what's going on just yet. Literally, this guy reminds me so much of characters like Leslie Knope or Michael Scott, just in the fact that they're in charge but they're really bad at it. Tom definitely being more subtle than either of those two characters, as I actually bought his reasonings for being helpful until Patricia so kindly pointed out that he never really is that helpful to anyone else on the island.
So if a woman is stranded and needs my help, yes, I'm going to offer it.
Okay, so what is the age cutoff? Because you once saw me with a flat tire and you kept on driving.
No, I didn't see
Ruth
you.
doesn't even have a car. She walks to work.
Well, I thought you enjoyed the exercise.
It's just pretty interesting the way he tries to virtue signal to disguise his lust, or the way he tries to avoid an unskippable cutscene from Rosemary. It's very apparent that Tom isn't the greatest of people, but that doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't have an interesting backstory. It's interesting to see someone so contrasted against the regular residents we see on the island, yet finding more correlation within their history. By that I mean, Tom, despite living and having such a long history with the island, seems like such a fish out of water by comparison. Yet the more we hear of his mysterious backstory, the more incorporated he feels within the island's history. And with his goals potentially being the complete opposite of his son's, it's definitely building up a very interesting dynamic between the two. Either way, I think I'm gonna have to put away my tinfoil hat for a lot of this show, because while he was talking with Rosemary, she ended up coughing on him. If he did get sick, I'd say it was karma for not giving her his water, considering he walked away right after anyways. And despite how funny it was in the moment, my mind would a mile a minute trying to convince itself that he was gonna get sick and get a little paralyzed, and then try to convince himself the hag didn't actually visit him, and maybe the episode would end with a hint that the hag was actually real the whole time. But no, by the end of this episode, it was confirmed that not only was the hag real, but potentially everything else here was as well. Tom ends up visiting Wick to learn more about the hag, which is a smart idea considering Wick seems to be the resident expert when it comes to the folktales of the island. For me, this is why Wick continues to be the highlight of the show, as anyone who's grown up in a small town has heard of these kind of stories. And as crazy and wild as these superstitions tend to sound, you can't help but always wonder, what if? But not only that, Wick seems to have a good heart going in to save Tom, someone he actively doesn't think is a good leader and potentially is responsible for many people soon to die. But he's also just bluntly truthful. Part of me does wonder why he tends to speak as if from experience though. While at first I thought maybe he had a relative who informed him of all this information, with him taking action in the recent episode, it feels like this is more of a muscle memory or response to everything going down. Which, considering Tom and Wick knew each other when they were younger, it potentially means that one of the winters that Tom was away, all this stuff could have gone down for Wick as well. I don't know, like with many of the characters of Widow's Bay, there seems to be a lot more lingering beneath the surface. But considering the town's frequent history of horrific events and how it kinda just keeps pushing, I wouldn't be surprised if this series ended with absolute manic chaos going on, only for the island to revert to normal as if nothing happened. Maybe with a couple dead people here and there, but still. We later catch up with Reverend Bryce finding a well. His storyline is probably what's going to lead to the big revelations of the show down the line, as not only did he have a written warning if the bells were ever to be tolled again, which I broke down in my recent video, but the church just so happened to be the last stop for people surviving off cannibalism during the storm from hell. Reverend Bryce ends up stumbling across Evan and his friends, which leads me to wonder what's going to be happening with them if the whole island is actively waking up. With things going down in Tom versus the hag, and then Patricia potentially dealing with the cocktail party, there's a good chance we'll also get an Evan-focused episode. Either way, Tom's attempting to hit things off with a tourist in town named Marissa. And while they do have some chemistry there, it looks like he's a little caught up on some sort of fear. The only question is, did he end up fumbling so bad because of the lingering memories of his wife? Or could it have been the fear of superstition? And he was just trying to keep Marissa safe from the hag potentially finding him. He ends up calling the whole thing off, and despite returning home, he still gets a visit from Marissa. Now when she appears here, she ends up throwing Tom off because she just doesn't sound like a real person at this point, and I fully agree. She is not only a tourist to Widow's Bay, but also towards social cues, as she did not pick up any of the signals he was throwing down that he just wasn't interested.
Aren't you going to let me in?
Why are you asking like that?
Can we just talk?
No.
And while Tom and myself at some point were just convinced that she had to be the old hag considering she was acting so odd, but it turns out she's just way overly confident. It's shortly after this that the paralysis starts to kick in and Tom is visited by the real hag. And despite Tom cutting it close, he is able to escape just in time, strangely avoiding the story's determined fate of the hag killing him and regaining so much of his energy despite being paralyzed. But I'm actually wondering if the moment beforehand, when he officially dozed off into his paralysis, his wife offering him the coffee was actually some sort of supernatural aid he received, potentially alluding to his dead wife being sort of a guardian angel protecting him. He ends up locking himself in the back rooms and is still struggling to move most of his limbs, with the hag quickly finding him, but barely being saved in time by Wick with a gun, with the hag exploding into seawater and leaving Tom with no other choice but to fully throw aside his skepticism for all the tales of the town, which was definitely a relief for me, as dealing with a whole season of Tom being skeptical of everything going on around him was not ideal. No, instead, it looks like this show might be barreling down towards utter chaos all around the island, with the ending alluding at something crazy going down over at the cocktail party with Patricia, leaving us with a massive cliffhanger with what could be a Patricia-focused episode next week, which I'm more than okay with. And while we don't get much more than a radio call, I think dissecting some of the trailer shots will clue us into something. See, there's a couple glimpses of what looks like a party or some sort of ceremony going down, only when you look closely, it's a majority of women. Now, considering most of this island consists of sailors who also tend to leave to the sea for several months at a time, it makes sense that there would be a strong community of women occupying the island. But when you throw in the town's history of an ancient coven of witches that they hunted down and burned, things get a little more interesting. Could this ceremony be the witches returning and becoming revenants of the dead, similar to Willie the Clown? Or could these potentially be women who are starting up their own cult-like ritual to enact vengeance for their ancestors monsters who happen to be the coven. Or potentially it's a new coven altogether. Either way, whatever goes down at this little soiree, we know has to get pretty crazy. As we later end up seeing Patricia wandering the island repping a shoddy and giving off the final girl vibes she definitely deserves. I did see a couple people theorize that the Islanders would have to sacrifice a mainlander to get everything to stop, but with so many wild trailer shots, I might have to make a whole separate video just breaking all that down. So if you're interested in seeing something like that, it really helps if you comment or like to let me know. But there's still so many lingering questions for this show. What is going on with everyone's age and their appearance? Are the folktales actually real, or is there some entity bringing their fears to life like Pennywise? And what is going on with Reverend Bryce and his whole storyline with the church? Either way, if you have any theories, I'm happy to hear them down below. But otherwise, I'll be seeing you guys for what looks like an exciting episode 4.